Here comes Astel & Kern with the SR25, the new entry-level model in the A&K lineup. Now, right from the top, I'm going to say that the SR25 is a very impressive release and quite competitive with other options at this price point like the Sony NW-ZX507 and FiiO M11 Pro. So let's find out why this might be our new favorite mid-range DAP. We'll start by laying out what has changed and what remains the same between the SR25 and the previous generation SR15. Now, the SR25 is basically an SR15 if you stretched out the screen, tweaked the amp, and then updated the connectivity and file decoding for 2020. We have the same oddball tilted display, but now it's larger, so text elements are easier to read and buttons are easier to tap. Micro USB has finally been replaced by a USB-C port, and the whole unit is now larger, but no thicker than the original SR15. Overall, we really welcome this increase in size because it makes the interface easier to use while the player is still physically well balanced for one-handed use. Though we would recommend some kind of case to take the edge off the player, quite literally. The interface of the SR25 remains the same as the SR15s with the same general speed, though we did notice that the SR25's touch display was a tad more responsive. This could be due to the screen protector on our SR15 demo. One big highlight of the new design is the battery life, which has been more than doubled from 10 hours on the SR15 to around 21 hours on the SR25. This puts the SR25 in the same league as players from Sony and Koan, and makes the player a great daily companion. While there hasn't been any updates to the internal Cirrus Logic DACs from the SR15, there has been an update to the file decoding capabilities. The SR25 can now natively decode DSD256 formats and sampling rates up to 384 kHz. And while the DAC hasn't changed, Astel & Kern has done some tweaking to the amp stage. On paper, there has been some small changes to THD and frequency response, and output impedance has also changed slightly on the single-ended output, going from 1.1 to 1.8 ohms. Output impedance on the balanced output remains the same at 1.6 ohms. Now, based on this, we would expect the SR25's single-ended output to sound slightly brighter and more similar to the balanced output when using certain low-impedance multi-balanced armature IEMs like the Campfire Audio Andromeda or Empire Ears Valkyrie. Now, actually listening to the SR25, I've been pretty impressed. The sound is clear and defined, and there's been a significant improvement in the noise floor of the player compared to the previous generation SR15. Single-ended output has a noticeably lower level of constant fuzz with ultra-sensitive IEMs, though it's low enough now that with ultra-sensitive IEMs like the Campfire Audio Andromeda, you can now hear some intermittent, spurious electronic noise that was previously hiding under the hiss. The balanced output is also cleaner, and while it still has a bit more noise than the unbalanced output, I prefer it since the noise is a constant fuzz rather than intermittent digital hash. Now, with all of these improvements, I think the SR25 makes a compelling package versus other players in this price class like the Sony ZX507 and FiiO M11 Pro. The SR25 offers noticeably more output power than the Sony, along with a comparable noise floor and more consistent battery life, and I think that overall it's a better player unless you absolutely need support for Google Play services. The FiiO M11 Pro is still better again in terms of output power, particularly for full-size headphones and low-impedance, low-sensitivity loads like the Mr. Speaker's Aeon Flow. But it is a larger device with a larger display and half the battery life. Both the Sony and FiiO players run full-fat Android, and while this is more flexible and tweakable, there's also a lot to be said for Astel & Kern's streamlined music-first approach, with no lock screens and account security to worry about. Overall, this is a worthy contender in the mid-range DAP space and even outdoes some of the more expensive high-end Astel & Kern players in key areas like battery life and noise floor. We've been super impressed by the SR25 and we think you will be too, so drop into our store to have a play or order online at minidisc.com.au. This is Lachlan for Minidisc TV and we'll see you next time.